Hello, my name is Tony. It's a myth that the 1969 James Bond movie on Her Majesty's Secret Service was a financial failure. At the box office that year, it ranked second only to Bitch Crappity and the Shit Pants Kid. The star, George Lazenby, despite being offered a 7-picture deal by Cubby Broccoli, jumped ship, believing Bond was old hat, and predicting noisily the franchise had no future. Not exactly Nostradamus, was he? Lazenby went on to enjoy a glittering screen career in... No, he didn't, did he? Idiot. This left Eon in a bit of a pickle. With the next James Bond movie on the slate, they had no star. What to do? Up against it, and against all the odds, they were able to cut a deal with the original Bond actor Sir Sean Connery to return for one final outing, in a role he had proclaimed he had grown to hate. How did they do it? Well, first they gave him £1 million payday, making him the first movie star to earn that amount for one movie. Connery, in an uncharacteristic demonstration of financial philanthropy, as he was known to be monetarily tight as a camel's anus in flight time, donated the dosh to a Scottish charity. In addition to this, the then CEO of United Artists, David V. Picker, agreed to bankroll 2 screen projects of Commander Connery's own choosing, in partnership with Connery's own production company, Tantalon Films, provided they cost $2 million or less. Even though Picker reneged on the deal when the first production, costing only £385,000 to make, tanked spectacularly, at least Connery's pet project, The Offence, saw the light of day. So UA got Diamonds Are Forever, and Connery got £1 million which he gave away, and The Offence, which lost money and failed to resonate with or attract the public in meaningful numbers. Financially, UA got the best deal. Diamonds cost $7.1 million to make and hit a global box office total of $116 million. I imagine though, in terms of personal satisfaction and on a creative level, Connery may well have felt he achieved the better outcome. May not have been all he hoped for, but there you go. In attempting to distance himself from the role that had made him famous and enhance his profile as a serious actor, Connery made some good movies, but sacrificed populism and box office returns in the process. He made films that were unlikely to be crowd-pleasing hits, but afforded him the opportunity to flex his dramatic muscles, like The Hill, the Molly Maguires, and the Anderson tapes. But if any role in any movie was going to be as completely removed from his James Bond persona as it was possible to get, then Detective Sergeant Johnson in The Offence was going to be it. So far removed that Bond was jettisoned over the equator and into the distance with such propulsive force that it vaporized and ceased to exist. It's 1971 and things are looking grim in Berkshire. The Offence was filmed in an area known as Wild Ridings. It was one of those so-called new towns built in the 60s. Well, it didn't stay new for very long, soon descending into a distressed appearance characterized by shabby, soulless concrete depression and despair. The location, like the film, transcends bleak as an adequate descriptor of look, feel and content. In The Offence, Sean Connery plays Detective Sergeant Johnson, one of several police officers working to apprehend a child rapist active in the area. After the latest attack, 2 officers on patrol spot Baxter, Ian Bannon, wandering around aimlessly in a dazed and uncommunicative state. He is dishevelled with mud on his clothes. They take him in for questioning. The latest victim, a 12-year-old girl, has been taken to hospital, but is in no condition to give a description of her attacker. Johnson is convinced Baxter is the culprit, but he is unwilling or unable to give a clear account of himself. With time running out to the point where Baxter will have to either be charged or released, Johnson clandestinely enters the interrogation room alone to talk to Baxter. Next thing you know, Baxter is lying unconscious and bloodied on the linoleum, and Johnson has attacked and floored the 3 officers who tried to move him away from Baxter. Baxter is rushed to hospital, but it's a wasted journey as he dies. What the fuck has happened and why? Director Sidney Lumet and screenwriter John Hopkins structure the narrative in a non-linear way. The film begins with the officers entering the interrogation room where Baxter is lying on the floor. Then it flips back in time to a police operation including Johnson carrying out surveillance on a school. Despite this measure, a young girl still goes missing. A search is initiated and she is later found by Johnson, having been brutalized and raped and left in a thicket. Lumet then takes us through what are essentially 3 three two-handers involving Johnson and another character. They are Baxter, the suspect under interrogation, Vivian Merchant as Maureen, Johnson's wife, and Trevor Howard as Cartwright, a top-ranking officer sent to investigate the events that led to Baxter's death. It soon becomes obvious that Detective Sergeant Johnson is not a well man. After 20 years on the force, he has encountered a multitude of horrors, including murder, child murder, sex abuse, rape, suicide, mutilation, and accidental death. He has recurring flashbacks, sees images in his head that he can't block out. In modern parlance, he would be diagnosed with, "You have post-traumatic stress disorder, Mr. Johnson." But this is 1971, when the most compassionate term would have been, "You're having a nervous breakdown, old chap," and the less sensitive, "You're going stark staring mad, you nutter." In the two-hander with his wife, taking place after Johnson has been suspended and told to wait at home, it becomes immediately clear that this is a loveless and troubled marriage, and that Johnson loathes her with some intensity. Connery and Merchant are superb, as he unsparingly degrades and criticises her for not being pretty, for not wanting sex, for not wanting him. He drinks scotch constantly and tells her he might have killed a man. He projects his anger and self-disgust onto her. She tries to make amends, to salvage, presses him to talk to her about his problems, what's going on in his life. In response, he describes the litany of horrors that he has witnessed during his career in such undiluted and graphic detail, so chillingly direct and casual in his reminiscences, that she must rush to the bathroom to be sick. Two officers turn up to take Johnson back to the station after delivering the news that Baxter is dead. The next two-hander is between Johnson and Cartwright. Cartwright demands of Johnson something like the truth, the original title for the film. What he gets is reticence, rambling, and rage. No punches are pulled as Connery and Howard go head to head. The interview gets nowhere, with Johnson providing no real rational explanation of events. At one point, Cartwright observes of Johnson,
"It makes me sick, Johnson, what you did. What you are turns my stomach."
The concluding two-hander is the final part of the events in the interrogation room. Initially, Johnson, so convinced of Baxter's guilt, decides to get him to crack before time runs out. Johnson is the dominant force, a hulking, brutish man on the edge, towering over and intimidating Baxter. Baxter lets it be known that he has a way of dealing with bullies. The power balance shifts when Baxter, who may or may not be guilty, it's ambiguous, starts to mock Johnson and suggests that he himself is harbouring secret fantasies regarding violence and rape. Johnson assimilates this suggestion into his fracturing psyche and believes it to be true, to the point where he begs Baxter for help as his personality disintegrates. Baxter rejects the idea violently, screaming,
"Help your bloody self, will you?"
and Johnson beats him savagely, ultimately causing his death. Baxter smiles throughout, like he's getting what he wanted, laughing at Johnson through the mask of blood on his face. The film ends after Connery puts three police officers down on the ground, then looks dazedly and uncomprehendingly around him at the men and Baxter's prone body.
"God. Oh my God,"
he utters. And that's it. The Offence, based on John Hopkins' stage play This Story of Yours, is not an easy watch. Some films, for any number of reasons, aren't. No matter how good they might be, no matter how good the audience acknowledges them to be, there's no pressing urge to watch them again anytime soon, if ever. Schindler's List, for example, Sallow, The Night Porter, there are many. The Offence is like that. It's a good film. Lumet directs it with quiet, concentrated intensity and a very restrained stylistic flourish. The acting from Connery, Bannon, Merchant and Howard is powerhouse stuff. In fact, it is the most startling and emotionally charged work of Connery's career, possibly his best on-screen showing in terms of pure dramatic performance and characterization. At times, the duologues and restricted settings betray the film's stage play origins, but as this is a drama at heart, it's no bad thing in itself, especially as it engenders a claustrophobic sense of being trapped, which the characters mostly are in one way or another. Jerry Fisher's cinematography, composed from a predominant palette of greys, blacks, browns and greens, has a washed-out grungy look. The exterior locations are bitterly cold, rain-swept and desolate, adding a depressed tonal quality to the visuals. Talking of tonal quality, this is the only film score composed by Sir Harrison Birtwistle, an English contemporary classic classical music composer. It consists in the main of isolated drones, whistles and shrieks. Not catchy in any way at all. What a surprise, pop pickers, but very eerie, discordant and ambient. By now you're probably getting an inkling of why it wasn't a box office blockbuster. It's not a feel-good flick, that much is certain. It absorbs difficult, controversial and disturbing subjects and deals with them in a fractious and disturbing way. And it doesn't answer any key questions. Is Baxter guilty? We don't get to know. His behaviour is certainly eccentric and erratic and at times goading and confrontational. He instinctively knows that Johnson is experiencing conflicted and perverse thoughts and emotions, as if he has an antenna for understanding what this is like.
Nothing I have done can be one half as bad as the thoughts in your head. I wouldn't have your thoughts.
He tells him. What happens to Johnson in the end? Again, we don't get to find out. It's not some neat little package that will leave you thinking, oh, I get it now, I understand. Because you won't. You won't see and you won't know. I guess it's easy to figure why it lacked mass appeal, even in a time when some of the most demanding and thought-provoking cinema was being made. There aren't any heroes, there aren't any traditionally likeable characters. Maureen may get some audience sympathy and to an extent Johnson himself. Her because her husband treats her with such cruel and unbridled contempt. Him because the job has burnt him out to the point of mental implosion where reality and corrupted imagination have collapsed into a confused slideshow of horror and warped desire in his head. Johnson was a thoroughly counterintuitive and therefore brave role for Connery to take on. For a lesser actor with a less determined philosophy and outlook, it could have been a career-ending move. But even those critics who didn't like the film had no choice but to accept and proclaim just how good he was, and it certainly didn't do any damage to his credibility. If Zardoz couldn't consign him to oblivion, then I guess nothing would. Should you see it? Connery fans and completists already have, most probably. I think it's a remarkable film, very much a time capsule, and it's relentlessly bleak and more than a little punishing. But if you want to see something that doesn't follow a conventional path, that takes a well-intentioned shot at confronting some tricky subjects and provides some electrifying examples of great screen acting, then you should give it a spin. It is the epitome of downbeat, stripped of all warmth and cheer, and you won't want to see it again in a hurry for sure. But it is worth your time, at least once around the block. Well, that didn't cheer me up any, but it did make me glad I'm not one of the characters in the offence, so that's a positive. Thanks unreservedly for taking the time to watch, makes it worthwhile. And if you feel the need, hit like, don't like, comment, or let me know your thoughts. And if you so desire, feel at liberty to subscribe. Not sure what's up next, there's nothing planned right now, but I can assure you it will be something. Later, pilgrims.